you rarely have a rack go out into a customer environment that doesn't have a switch in. So a lot of this is not news to you, but I think it's important to note that essentially all of these applications are a good fit for NETGEAR switches. So of course you've got your small room, your conference rooms, boardrooms, your small port count applications. A lot of these environments require PoE, some of them do not. We've actually, and I'll touch on this, or Randy and I'll touch on it later in the presentation, we've actually worked with almost all of the 1 gig AV over IP solutions that are out in the marketplace to make sure that our switches that you're deploying have been tested and validated by these other manufacturers that are making the encoders and decoders, the transmitters and receivers. And then you've got, you're probably working on what I like to call performance room-based networking applications. And these are environments that absolutely warrant and deserve 10 gig video. The picture quality between 10 gig and 1 gig, of course, is negligible if you're looking at a small screen, or maybe if you're in a conference room. But in these environments, if it's a procedure room, right, or perhaps a performing arts center or a stadium, command and control where there's a lot of detail, a lot of small font, these are great applications for 10 gig SDVoE. And we have PoE and non-PoE switches available for these types of projects. And again, kind of like the 1 gig environments, we've actually tested with all of the 10 gig providers, including all the SDVoE manufacturers, of course, but also companies like Extron, and their NAV product has been tested and validated with our switches. Audio networking, and I know these products are or will become, or these protocols are will become video enabled as well. But AVB, we've got some switches that actually Igmp resells, where you can apply an AVB license. Dante, in fact, Autonate just recently became part of the SDVoE Alliance. And then we have projects which are typically facility-wide, where you have a lot of sources, a lot of video sources going to a lot of different viewing areas, perhaps on different floors and different rooms. And as Randy will talk about when we get into the products, our switch, we have switches that are designed to be stackable, and 1 gig, 10 gig, 40 gig even. We've got a 100 gig switch coming out here in a couple months. And these projects, I'm sure you'll benefit from interfacing with our Pro AV engineering services team, because they're, again, happy to look at requirements and network designs and essentially make sure that the right switches are in place. So Randy, maybe I'll hand the ball over to you, and you can talk a bit more specifically about our switch offerings.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cody. Stacy, thanks for having Cody and I appreciate that. Yeah, let's start off with this switch. Most of you folks probably know that NETGEAR has been in the networking business for over 20 years, and kind of our claim to fame is our switch line of products. So anywhere from unmanaged switches all the way up to fully managed switches. So there's a number of different categories that we have. Certainly unmanaged switches, we probably own about 65 to 70% of that business. Although it's declining a little bit, our growth has actually come up, and one of the reasons why is we've been able to add 10 gig. We're adding PoE to these devices, so our market share has actually climbed a little bit. And then the next two categories are really web-based management products. So there's no command line interface, there's no telnet or secure shell to these products, but they do carry QoS, what we call layer 2 plus or layer 3 light, so static routing. And some of these, especially the smart stackables, we can take those switches and stack them like we could on a full-blown layer 3 product. So the fully managed product, the 4300, is really that product set that we've aimed toward the SDVOE and the AV over IP industry. Yeah, go ahead, Cody, if you want to forward the slide. Yeah, I won't go through this too much, but as Cody alluded to, as matrix switches become a little bit less prevalent, we're seeing the growth in the AV over IP market. And one of the reasons why we joined the SDVOE Alliance was we felt that we could contribute to this market. And so, as you mentioned, we're one of the founding members. So we have folks that sit on the Alliance board and whatnot. We also spend a lot of money, or not money, but a lot of emphasis on getting equipment to all the major manufacturers, not just the SDVOE Alliance members, but also the Crestrons and Extrons and those folks out there as well. So our goal is to have most of those major manufacturers certify our products and put information on how to configure those boxes with application notes and tricks and tips on how to configure it. So if you, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this is just a good graphic to kind of give you an idea of the flexibility of AV over IP. One of the advantages of SDVOE is actually the members can contribute to products that are interoperable. So for example, you could have a ZV encoder and Aurora multimedia decoder, and they will function together. So the ability to make changes, to just add devices and expand your network are phenomenal this way. If you were doing that with a matrix switcher, there's a lot of, either you're adding a bigger product and it's kind of a forklift upgrade, or there's a lot of commands that you have to go through in order to configure that. So here you could just move things around at ease and they'll still work. Go ahead, Cody. Yeah, so the 4300 series, one good thing to know, you're probably aware that NETGEAR, we provide a lifetime warranty. And the way that works is if you have an issue or your customer has an issue, you call our support line. Our engineers will walk you through some diagnostics, and if they determine that there is an issue and it needs to be replaced, they'll do the RMA right there. They'll actually ship you a new product, whether it's a power supply, fan, chassis. They will replace that unit next day, so advanced replacement. So basically all you do is pull out the bad one, throw in a new one, and ship the old one back. So, and that's also true with any features. For example, we've added some features to the 4300 that enable video streaming, and we've made a lot of engineering changes to help that process as easy as possible. Those are no cost upgrades, so you just pull down the new firmware and you're good to go. And as I mentioned too, these are full-blown layer 3 products. So they do OSPF, RIP, BGP. We can do PIM sparse, PIM dense, and of course Igmp and all the configurations for that. Now there is no license, so some of our competitors, you actually have to renew an annual license to provide the layer 3 feature set. That's not the case here. Once you buy the box, you're good to go, no annual fees. So, and again, all of these are layer 3 and full-blown capabilities. There's a web interface where you can configure that way. You can telnet into the box. You can secure shell, and also you can use our product called NMS that'll go out and discover all these devices, not only the layer 3 products, but also the web managed piece. So you can map those and set up alerts and things like that.
And just to highlight something too that Randy mentioned is, so Igmp, and so these were kind of designed for video delivery. So these are essentially plug and play for multicast video delivery, right? And so all the AV over IP vendors, whether it's 1 gig or 10 gig, these, Randy mentioned, we're testing the other manufacturer. You can essentially plug in an encoder, plug in a decoder, and it will work out of the box. So, the Igmp snooping, fast leave, Igmp querier, these things are pre-configured. So if there's any concern from engineers or support people about configuring switches, you should really be looking at NETGEAR, because we've designed these to work out of the box, plug and play.
Yeah, from a stacking perspective or spine and leaf too, all of these can stack together regardless of whether they're 10 gig products or the 1 gig product. All right, this chart is really showing you the 10 gig portfolio.
Hey guys, I do have a question from the audience, if I could just jump in here real quick. Do any of the switches support 802.3bt PoE?
Not yet.
Not
yet. It's something we're investigating. I can't comment on anything quite yet, but stay tuned.
Yeah, so it's definitely on our roadmap. We've had a lot of requests for it. So as it stands today, yeah, all of the PoE products are PoE plus. We did have a chassis switch that did universal PoE at 60 watts per port, but that product is actually going into life because of the new products that we'll be introducing. It didn't make sense to keep that one around. So good question.
Thank you.
From left to right, sorry, is there another question?
Nope, thanks.
Good. Yeah, so again, these are our 10 gig portfolio. There's some pretty nice products here from a top of rack perspective, and we have a few combination half width products. So the 4300 8x8F actually has 8 ports of 10 gig copper and a combination of 8 ports of 10 gig Qsfp ports. They're half width, so it's really nice if you have multiple half width boxes. They are rack mountable. You can bolt them together. So if you're doing any teaming or any devices that do MLAGs, you can provide redundancy that way.
We have another question from the audience here. They want to know if there are any rear-facing ports products.
Not at this time, as far as the cabling in the back, I would assume. So the cabling on the back, we will be introducing some here, probably in the first or second quarter of 2020. So yeah, it's one of the things, as Cody mentioned, we're fairly, we've been working with the SDVOE Alliance for about 4 or 5 years now. In our products, we spend a lot of time, engineering time, to make sure that Igmp and all those protocols are out of the box work. What we're starting to work on now is really the look and feel of a product. So we understand that having the ports in the back from a cable management perspective are very important, and the front to have it look nice and have some pretty good LEDs. So we're very aware of that. So appreciate the question there. So
okay, we got one more question that popped up.
Sure.
Can these switches use Qsfp plus cards from other manufacturers like FS?
Yeah, actually we do. They're standards based. There's only 2 or 3 manufacturers of Qsfp products, but one thing you have to do understand, so they will work. You know, it's not as if you put a third party in, we're not going to do any self-test and deny that thing to work. What you do have to understand, however, though, is if you use a third party device, that lifetime warranty could be at risk. So while we're troubleshooting, we'd make sure that you put in a NETGEAR branded GBEC just to make sure. But yeah, to answer your question, that they will work.
Okay, another question. Do these have stacking ports, or do you have to use the SFP or Qsfp ports for stacking? As a follow-up, when stacking can the other SFP or Qsfp for edge switches?
Yeah, currently we don't have a matrix stacking device. We use Ethernet ports. So you're correct. Yes, we use either the 10 gig copper or 10 gig SFP ports to stack that device. So there are advantages to moving to what we call a spine and leaf technology. So you can have multiple switches at the top of the stack, and then down in your IDFs or in different closets, you can stack perhaps our 1 gig and then have multiple links, one to each one of those top of rack. And depending on how large the infrastructure is, that tends to be a little bit better from a performance standpoint and a redundancy standpoint. Hopefully that answered your question.
I believe.
Is there another
did,
question?
So let's move forward.
Okay, great. Yeah, so there's a couple other combination cards. So we do have a 12 by 12, so very similar to the 8 by 8, but has 12 of each one of those ports. And then as you walk through, we have a 24 port all copper. We also have a 24 by 24, so same thing. However, this is a full 19-inch rack model. So the 24 by 24 again is 24 ports of copper and 24 ports of fiber. And if you look down below, all of these products are non-blocking. So the throughput on the fabric is very fast at the end of the day, and we have a nice number of buffers there to support a non-blocking infrastructure. And then we also have a 48 port 10 gig. There's a couple other products that we'll be releasing here in October. They're more fiber oriented. If you notice, because of the combination 8 by 8, 12 by 12, and 24 by 24, if you don't require that, you just need fiber. We do have a 24 port SFP plus product coming out and a 48 port. We also will introduce a lower form factor for the copper. We'll have a 16 port 10 gig copper as well. And then all the way to the right, that's probably our banner product because of the flexibility and the ability to do larger opportunities. So it's a 2U high, and it has 12 slots where you can put a number of different modules in that. And actually, I was just going to ask you to move that down, so that's cool. So there's a number of SKUs that you can start with. You can actually have an empty chassis and then populate it with whatever module you want. And there's 4 of them there below, and I'll explain those in a second. On the top there's also a what we call a bundle, and we have a number of those where we actually populate the chassis a little bit for you, so we can provide a better price on that. And then there's a number of different power supplies depending on your PoE budget. So the 4 modules that we currently have today are 8-port multi-speed copper. So we can do 100 megabit, 1 gig, 2.5, 5 gig, and 10 gig. And so any speed of a device that you put in, it will automatically adjust to that speed, and you're good to go. Below that is the 8-port copper PoE Plus module, and if you see the little green board on top, that's actually the daughter card that provides the PoE Plus capabilities. Then, of course, we've got an 8-port Qsfp Plus. It'll support 1 gig and 10 gig. And then below that, we have a 2-port Qsfp Plus card to provide 40 gigs. So it's kind of cool. You can provide up to 24 ports of 40 gig. These are also important if you're going to do any stacking. So you can take up to 3 of the 96X chassis and provide a 72 by 72 by providing 40 gig lags to create a non-blocking infrastructure to support 4K video.
Okay, we have one question regarding this. Okay. I got a question regarding price per port for 10G plus PoE plus.
Cody, do you have any information on that? It's actually cheaper for the Qsfp Plus modules, and they're roughly around $100, mainly because you can use DAC cables to go up to each device. But from a copper PoE perspective, Cody, do you have any information?
It might be.
I don't know that.
Yeah, don't quote me on it. I mean, it might be around $120-ish per port.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. But, one other neat thing about this box is all of the major SDVoE providers did the beta testing on this. So there are probably 20 manufacturers that did the beta testing, and out of all of those 20, 18 or 19 of them were Pro AV partners. The other was the FBI digital forensics folks, and so they kind of beat the snot out of it. So it's pretty good product coming out day one. So they did a lot of help in making sure that we didn't have any major bugs as we introduced it. This product's been out for probably about 1.5 years. One other thing is a number of the SDVoE Alliance members are actually creating products for this. So ZV has announced a 4-port HDMI card that will insert into that. Now, that is not a NETGEAR product, but just to let you know that we will have third-party folks building products and modules for that, so they can also give them APIs so they can, set up their software and whatnot through the box. And again, this has a lifetime warranty.
Gentlemen, we have a quick question about explaining your zero touch.
Yeah, as Cody alluded to earlier, we've taken all the Igmp protocols and enabled them out of the box. So Igmp query, snooping, fast leave, and things like that. If you're in an IT environment and you're running data and voice and things like that over a network, adding those configurations for video streaming can kind of wreak havoc. So we invested a lot of engineering time to make sure that that's not the case. So in smaller environments, we could actually, turn the box on, give it an IP address, and introduce it into a AV over IP environment, and it'll work fine. Cody and I just had an opportunity. We had a third-party switch. A company was installing. They were having issues. We shipped the switch out, and they were spending, 2 or 3 days getting things to work. We shipped 4300 out and basically plugged it in, turned it on, and they were good to go. So we've developed some other features too, and we're calling it Igmp version 3+. That we're adding more capabilities to make life easier. Another thing that we'll be introducing, and again, this is kind of NDA stuff, but we're taking macros and we're building macros. So if you have perhaps a AVB or Dante or Qsfp opportunity or solution, we're building macros. So at a touch of a button, basically, it'll go out and build those VLANs and whatnot for you automatically. So there's a lot going on in the roadmap, and if anyone's very, very interested in hearing that under NDA, we could really give you a good look and feel on how far out we are for the next couple years. So glad to set that up if it makes sense for you. I think anything
Randy,
you want to add?
No, I think it's good. Do you want to touch on the 1 gig switches briefly?
Yeah, yeah. So if you look at Crestron and Extron, most of their their 4K video and up products don't require 10 gig because they do more compression than perhaps SDVoE. So they recommend 1 gig solutions. So we do have a wide range of gigabit solutions. So 24 port, 48 port, and then some of those are PoE or and non-PoE. You can stack up to 8 of these devices. Again, because you don't have the stacking matrix, you would just use the 10 gig ports. And it's very similar. You can manage those virtually. So there's a commander, and if perhaps the commander fails, then the secondary would take over and build it that way. And one of the things we really want to make sure that as we built that design center, you guys can certainly give us your requirements, and we can sit down and understand the project you're working on, and we'll have our engineers help you architect that, help you configure it, and help you position that with your customers as well. Now below there, there's also a number of different power supply units, and the power supplies, if you pull the box and turn it around, those are modular as well. So you can add different wattages based on what your power budgets are. If you look at some of the graphics there, there's actually underneath some of the ports, you'll notice a yellow marking. That indicates that it's a PoE port. That way at a glance, you can figure that out. So anything you want to add to that, Cody? Or
Yeah, the only thing I'll mention too is that all of the ports are PoE. So on the PoE plus models, they're all PoE, right? So all right, well let's Randy mentioned lifetime warranty. Pretty much all of our switches, except for the low end small port count, come with a lifetime warranty. You'll see there's, my third bullet point there says 90-day phone support. Just so you're aware, that's only really for the end customer. As partners, we're going to support you, indefinitely. So if you buy a switch and maybe you stage it and then it doesn't get installed for 90 days, it's not like we're going to stop supporting you by phone. And again, that's kind of part of the reason we now have a dedicated Pro AV support team. Randy mentioned the testing we've been doing. Again, it's really, we understand how important it is to make sure things are interoperable and you can design projects with whatever encoder, decoder, flavor of whatever you want to use. So again, we've been working really, really hard to make sure that specifically our M4300 series line of switches, which are the ones Randy was just talking about, have been tested and validated by all the major manufacturers, whether it's an SDVoE or a non-SDVoE encoder, decoder, it's going to work, right? And so all of these companies have either tested it or have our switch in their labs, and things are working fine. It's just a matter of getting them to update their list of approved switches and associated documentation. So just to kind of, in summary, right? We think we're really well positioned in this space, especially when you consider what we have coming, in the next say 6 months, 6 to 9 months. We've got great products. We're doing things specific for the industry, AV specific products. We have a great team in place who's at the ready to help with design and supporting your projects, and we're really anxious to work with everyone and help make their projects successful. We do have, and I realize this is really small font, but I'm happy to share an electronic copy with whoever wants one. We've got a nice little guide that we created that on the left-hand side lists, typical environments, right? Like a huddle space, a small Dante environment, a large 1 gig AV over IP, and we created this little cheat sheet that will kind of give you the corresponding, NETGEAR switch model, because we recognize we do have a lot of SKUs and models. The feedback from engineers has been really positive with this tool as a means to kind of help point them in the right direction of a switch for any given project. So that's the extent of what we have. Our contact information is listed there. Again, I'm Cody, and then it's Randy. I was giving you all the good technical information on the switches. That proav.engineeringservices@netgear.com email address. Sorry, I know it's a lot of letters, but hopefully it's easy to remember. That email address is there. So Randy, do you have anything to add, or Stacy, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, you know what I think I'll do, Cody, is take off the mute for everyone and open it up. If you don't have a question, we'd appreciate it if you put it back on mute, but maybe open it up for some broader questions here so that if there are any remaining questions, we can get those answered. So let's see here.
So that's the idea. Then we could use the other ones to drop down somewhere if we need it. Get them out of this rack in case we have to do something.
Does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask?
Yeah, that's supposed to overtake that one. As far as, I mean, the other one, is that one the 24 port as well? Yeah, this one's 26. It also has
any more questions.
SFP ports.
Oh, wait a minute.
Use on fiber. So if we ever really want to link it somewhere else and do Dante,
do you have
one of these fibers?
Do you have switches more geared toward 1 gig H?
It's also part of the central casting, just in case approach. Do networking over.
Did you guys hear that question?
Stacy, I didn't hear the question.
Oh, I apologize. Let me repeat it. We had a question regarding switch. Do you have or show some switches more geared toward 1 gig H.264 applications?
Yeah, I mean, all of our IGMP enabled switches, which extend beyond the 4300 series, are going to support H.264, whether it's delivered via unicast or multicast. I mean, actually, even if it doesn't support IGMP, right, you can deliver unicast H.264 over them without an issue. Yeah, H.264 will work great.
Okay.
Yeah, even our lower end switches have IGMP. Perhaps some of those are not enabled out of the box, though. You would just go in and configure them.
And H.264 is just the encoding standard, right? Or just how it's encoded. So you don't need IGMP even to deliver H.264 video. It's just like, with your home router, you could watch a H.264 encoded stream on your computer that's playing, and from YouTube or wherever, and that works fine. So Yeah, we've got a full spectrum though of 1 gig. Again, everything from small port count unmanaged to the fully managed stuff that we spent a lot of time talking about.
Okay, so the next question I have is from Greg. He says, I do a lot of pro audio work. Love to hear more about that.
Sure, Randy, do you want to cover the pro audio stuff?
So like Dante, yeah, actually the way we set that up right now is through a number of scripts that we provide. So as we mentioned earlier, as we're testing with manufacturers, they're putting together and we're putting together application notes to really assist you. So for example, right now with Dante, we've gone in and we've done some new firmware updates to help that out of the box a little bit better. But earlier on, what we did was we did a lot with quality of service and things like that to assist with that. And then we also have an AVB license that we have on our a couple of our web-based managed products. As Cody mentioned, we provide those out to Biamp, so we sell a lot of those. And then future products will be really aimed at the audio piece moving forward.
Okay, I have a follow-up question from the same person. They asked, are these designed to be sort of plug and play for H.264 applications?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, H.264 is very easy for us to support. There isn't any. In fact, there isn't even anything that you would need to do specifically to make H.264 work on any of our switches.
Yeah.
It's really the nuances of video delivery really only get complicated when you're doing AV over IP multicast delivery, where that's where those Igmp the Igmp settings that Randy had mentioned, like that's really going to be beneficial, right? Where the Igmp and multicast delivery works right out of the box, and that's pretty differentiated in the marketplace. So if you're doing any, Crestron NVX or SVSI or Extron Nav, their new Nav product, or Kramer or Atlona, any of those types of products, that's when you really got to pay attention to the switch that's going in place, how that switch is configured, and we're going to make those installs a lot easier for you.
Okay, our next question is, are all the 4300 series switches fully L3 capable with inter-VLAN routing support?
Randy, you want to grab that?
Sorry, I must have been unmuted again. Yeah, it's full-blown layer 3, so all the licenses are there. So as I mentioned earlier, OSPF, PIM sparse, PIM dense, BGP. It's a full-blown layer 3. It's actually a Broadcom chipset, so out of the box, it's pretty good to go from a layer 3 perspective.
Okay, I have a few requests. Just to let everyone know as they get off here, we will follow up with you. Some people have asked that we maybe share the cheat sheet, and perhaps we can share your presentation as well. The next question I have is, would these switches cause a lag in video? Is there compression?
No, so our switches aren't doing any compression. All the compression that happens in an AV over IP environment happens with the encoder. And the delay happens due to compression and decompression, for that matter. So, but we're not going to introduce any latency into in installation, at least not any perceivable latency.
Yeah, the backplane on all of these layer 3 switches are non-blocking. So essentially what that means is I could flood every port and still not lose a packet because of both the fabric and the buffering that we can do. So we kind of say it's zero latency. It's not true, but it's so small that it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
And then from an SDVOE perspective, the encoder does not compress like it would on other products. Essentially, we use 9 gig for video, and then we actually reserve a gig on that port for regular data flows. But from a compression standpoint, SDVOE can do a 4K 4x4x4 at 60 hertz at pretty much no compression.
Okay, I have a question from Michael Boitnott, and I'm going to unmute his microphone so he can ask his question. All right, let's see if we can get him up. Michael, can you hear us? I don't know if that will.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
I asked the question about compression, and I was just wondering if you guys know if the new Dante video will support uncompressed video routing.
I honestly haven't heard. I don't know enough, unless Randy does. I don't know enough about the new Dante stuff. Comment. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we can check that out because our product line manager has really good relationships with their product folks and engineering. As we mentioned earlier, AutoNate did join the SDVOE Alliance. So from an engineering to engineering perspective, we work with them quite a bit. So we can try to find that out for you.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, I can share your email. If you're okay with that, I'll share your email with them so that they can respond back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we have one more question, maybe 2. The next question is again about SFP, and they want to know any thoughts about an SFP only version.
Yes. So go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, go ahead. You started.
Yeah. So when we were going through the 10 gig, we had some like an 8x8 and a 12x12, 24x24. I think those are the 3. But you asked about SFP only, and those are 2 of the new switches. There's 3 new switches that we're introducing within the next month. One's 18 or 16 port copper, and then we're coming out with a 24 port SFP and a 48 port SFP, and these are SFP only switches. Am I right, Randy?
Yeah.
Okay. A couple other questions. I have a question from Eli about online training opportunities. Do you have free online training opportunities?
We are working on it. I was just on a call about 2 hours ago to get a status update on that. And we have a curriculum that's being put in place, or that's being worked on and developed. Originally, the target was end of September. They're running behind schedule, so I would guess sometime in October we will have it. And then once we have it, by the way, then we'll work with Avixa and get the CTSRUs to go along with it. So yes, please stay tuned for that. Also, though, if you want to learn more about SDVOE and even networking as it relates to video transport, whether it's SDVOE or not, the SDVOE Alliance website, I think it's sdvoe.org or something. You can Google it and find it. They have an academy that has some good training, and we actually developed some of the network stuff for that academy. So I would highly recommend checking that out.
Yeah, also, if you're interested, we'd be happy to customize something for you, whether it's just a webinar. We can bring on one of our engineers and actually go through configurations, go through the product in a little bit more detail. If that's something you'd like to do, be happy to set that up for you.
Sounds great. Next question is, will the new Dante video support uncompressed video routing?
Yeah, I wish I knew more about the new Dante stuff. We're gonna have to do some homework on it. I'm not hip to it yet.
All right, that looks like we are at the end of our questions. A lot of requests for you to share your presentations. So I'd just like to thank everybody for joining us today. Cody and Randy, do you have anything you want to put out there before we wind it up?
I don't. Thanks again so much for everyone's time. We look forward to working with you. Please never hesitate to reach out if you have questions or need pricing or anything. Again, our contact information is there, and we're happy to do whatever we can to make you successful.
All right, I will say too that if you're interested in any of these products or need to find out more or want to schedule maybe some training, certainly reach out to your Herman sales rep. They would be glad to help you with any of that. And I do want to let you know that we will be sending you a follow-up survey with some questions, and we'd appreciate if you fill that out and let us know what you thought of the presentation today, and maybe let us know what you think about some presentations we should develop that you might be interested in. So again, thank you, Cody and Randy. It was a great presentation. We look forward to talking to you again. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Take care.
All right. Thanks, guys.